I always thought death would come in silence, but on the day I died, what I heard was laughter. My name is Marga Lewis. I'm 72 years old, and this is the account of the day I watched my own funeral. Before you judge me, let me tell you the truth. I didn't do it for drama. I did it to survive. I want you to know that I'm relieved to finally share my story. Please like this video before we continue. It really helps. Now, listen to my story. It all began in a doctor's office. The clock on the wall read 11:17 when Dr. Samuel Carter closed my file and, without looking up, said in that weary voice of someone who's seen it all, "You're fine, Marga. The body's tired, but not sick." "I know," I said. "What makes me sick isn't my body." He looked at me over his glasses. "Your children." I nodded. Olivia and Brandon, beautiful names, beautiful lives online, beautiful words for others. For me, they saved only instructions. "Mom, you should sell the house. Mom, that old necklace doesn't suit your age. Mom, stop calling at night, we're busy." Sometimes I think I was more mother to their last name than to my children. "Marga, listen," the doctor said after a pause long enough to fit a whole life inside. "You're lucid. You have every right. If you want to decide what happens to your estate, do it while they still understand it's a decision, not a whim. They only listen when they need something. Then make them need to listen." That sentence swam around in my head as I walked home, crossing the familiar streets where I once pushed grocery carts, picked up my kids from school, and ran to catch the last bus. In the living room mirror, the silver-haired woman staring back at me had an expression I hadn't seen in years, the look of someone who's made up her mind. I called Ruth, my friend of 50 years, the only one who still calls me by my old nickname. "Maggie, what's going on? I want to do something crazy, Ruth, and I need your help. Tell me it's not a crime." "Not a crime, a test." That night I texted Robert Hale, our family lawyer since Harold, my late husband, opened his first jewelry shop downtown. "Robert, we need to talk. It's confidential." He replied in 5 minutes. He always did. The next morning, I told him everything. The disdain, the pressure to sell the house, the whispers that slipped through the cracks like cold water, nursing home, professional care. "It's for your own good, Mom." Robert listened with his fingers interlaced, head bowed, as if in prayer. "You want a simulation? I want the truth, which, frankly, is harder than a lie." He murmured, almost smiling. "What kind of truth?" "I want to know who my children really are when they believe I can no longer answer back." The plan was born in silence, over the same table where I once rolled birthday truffles and signed the papers to buy this house. Ruth would stay with me in the guest room, posing as a morning nurse. The doctor would certify an emergency followed by death at home, a legally safe simulation orchestrated by Robert, with restricted communication, and a brief wake at the mansion itself, just as Harold had once wanted. The doors would open to family, a few friends, and whatever was left of respect. The night before, I stayed in my bedroom, the same one since I was 32, and traced the marks on the wall. The sun pushed the window's shadow down to the floor like a falling scarf. I wrote 2 lines on a piece of paper. "When I'm in there, I want to remember who I am out here." I tucked it beside the lace blouse I'd wear, irony of ironies, my death outfit. I always thought death would come in silence. I learned that sometimes it comes with a plan. I didn't know that the next day I'd hear my children laughing while looking at my picture. The house smelled of lilies. I've always hated lilies. Harold used to say they were flowers for important people. I thought they were flowers for people who needed something else to scream for them, like strong perfume on someone insecure. Robert handled everything with Swiss watch precision. The simple urn, the cream-colored drape, the neatly aligned chairs, and the framed photo. The one Olivia insisted on using every year because it makes you look dignified. Mom, dignified. I've been called many things, respected rarely. "Remember, Maggie, don't leave this room until I call you," Ruth whispered, adjusting my short wig and a pair of glasses with clear lenses. "Looks like I'm about to play the role of my life." I tried to joke. "You already have, dear. You're just waiting for the applause." I stayed in a small side room, a lace curtain separating me from the parlor. From there, I could see half the world: shoes, dress, hems, restless hands, glasses of water. Voices reached me in fragments, like grief tuned to a fading station. Olivia arrived first, late, as always, but with flawless hair. She wore a pale coat and held her phone, clutching her tears with the same grip she used for her likes. Brandon followed soon after, dark suit and tight smile. The one he wears when he needs to look reliable. It all happened so fast, I heard Olivia say as she hugged an acquaintance I never liked. At least she didn't suffer, the woman replied, her mouth close to my portrait. Robert made a brief statement. The Lewis family thanks everyone for being here. The burial will be private. There will be a short reading of messages during the final hour. Messages. The word rang in my ears. I'd left a letter to be read, not to move anyone, but to name what had gone unnamed for years. The wake picked up pace. People I hadn't seen in decades appeared to collect memories. The old baker, one of my kids' elementary school teachers, a neighbor who once borrowed salt and never returned it. Every hug carried a different weight. Every my condolences sounded like sorry I never looked closer. And then came the one thing I wouldn't wish on anyone. Hearing your own children talk when they believe you're dead. The house is way too big, Brandon whispered impatiently. If we sell within 30 days, the money comes in fast and we can take care of everything before we travel. Travel, Olivia laughed. We deserve it. It's been a rough few months, hasn't it? It has. Very rough months. I thought of the pots, the pills, the notes I'd left on the fridge that always made their way back to the sink untouched. Those must be the rough months. A group of Brandon's co-workers arrived, smelling of success and hurry. Sorry for your loss, man. Thanks, he replied, practicing solemnity. My team can help you with the paperwork. Appreciate it. I just want to get it all done quickly. Olivia leaned near the portrait and took a discreet selfie. Side angle, misty eyes. #miss you, she typed. I read it reflected in the glass, and then laughter. Small, but sharp as a blade. Look at this. Brandon pointed to a vase I loved. A wedding gift from my mother. That antique shop downtown would pay good money for it. Retail therapy heals any grief, Olivia replied, with the smug humor of someone charmed by her own joke. I felt my body start to tremble. Ruth squeezed my hand in the dark. Now you know, she whispered. Now I hear, I corrected. On the side table, I saw Olivia's purse left open. Inside, a folded paper with a red pen resting on top. Sober Living Clinic, vacancies available. I knew that name. A nursing home, disguised as a spa. To stay close to your loved ones, said the slogan. The last thing that ever brought me close to my children was their crib. I don't know how long I stayed there. Time had stopped meaning anything. Robert passed by, short, precise steps. Almost time, he said without looking at me. When he says almost time, it means the tide has already turned. That night, before the last flower wilted, I would rise from the bottom of my own funeral. Robert tapped the microphone. The sound came back dry and grainy, like soil. On behalf of Mrs. Marga Lewis, I'll read a message she left behind. The murmuring stopped. Olivia adjusted her hair. Brandon, his tie. The letter wasn't beautiful. It wasn't meant to be. I was too old to be pleasant. If you're hearing this, it's because I didn't have time to finish a few conversations. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I'm writing to remind you. I'd chosen simple words, no barbs, no accusations, because truth, when it's true, cuts deep enough on its own. Children, when you were small, I sold my wedding rings to pay 1 month of daycare. When you grew up, I sold my hours so you could buy as many of yours as you wanted. Today, if I had the time, I might even sell what little silence I have left just to hear a mom that isn't out of obligation. A ripple ran through the room. I saw hands gripping tissues that wiped away nothing. In recent months, I've often heard, it's for your own good. I always wanted the best for you. The best doesn't always want us back. Olivia swallowed hard. Brandon glanced around, searching for allies in a room full of mirrors. As for the house, it isn't an address, it's a biography. As for the inheritance, it isn't money. It's knowing the name of the one who made you fit in this world. Robert, the seasoned man he was, paused at just the right moments, letting the medicine take effect. I breathed in. The next part would be the key that turned the lock. Finally, my will has been recorded. Nothing is to be sold in haste. The house will be donated to a foundation supporting elderly people without family, to be established in the coming days. My personal belongings, the ones with emotional and historical value, will be catalogued and preserved by that foundation. To you, my children, I leave what has always been yours, my name. Use it when you learn how to pronounce the word respect. A low hum passed through the room. Some people stood, others leaned back in their chairs. Ruth, beside me, squeezed my hand. "Ready," she whispered. "Born ready. I just hadn't realized it until now." Robert concluded, "In respect to the expressed wishes, I'll inform those present of the legal procedures afterward. Thank you." Olivia reacted first, her voice loud enough to make sure everyone heard. "This is ridiculous. My mother would never write something like that." "Sweetheart, you've never read a single thing I've written," I thought. Brandon tried the polite Tanger route. "Robert, as the family's lawyer, you should be the first to stop this madness." "As the family's lawyer," Robert replied, calm as stone, "I'll be the first to carry out the wishes of the one who still has them." That's when I knew the moment had come. My body was cold as marble, but my heart, finally, was beating right where it belonged, in my place. I turned off the light at the back of the small room. The parlor sank into a half-darkness that wasn't mourning, it was anticipation. When the light returned, the coffin was open. There was a single second of silence, the kind that doesn't exist on clocks. Then came the screams. No, I didn't crawl out of the coffin like in a horror movie. I simply appeared standing beside the urn, my photograph behind me, my presence in front. I was alive. What wasn't, and never would be again, was the excuse. Someone dropped a glass. The sound of breaking glass is the same as a secret shattering. Olivia went pale, hand over her mouth. "Mom, daughter." Brandon stepped forward, then 2 steps back, as if missing the rhythm of a dance. "What is this? What kind of spectacle is this?" The word spectacle found in me an old stage. "The same kind you've been putting on for years. The show of appearances." Olivia started crying, tears rehearsed, without a story. I thought many things too, my dear. I thought, for instance, that being a mother was enough. It isn't. Robert kept his perfect composure, but there was a trace of relief in his voice. "As everyone can see, Mrs. Marga Lewis is alive, lucid, and fully capable of exercising her rights. The decisions read here were signed and registered by her." "This is illegal," Brandon snapped. "Illegal is betraying your own biography," I replied. "The rest, the law can handle." The guests didn't know where to look. Some stared at the floor, others at me, as if faith itself had made an appearance. I wasn't a miracle. I was, finally, the author of my own story. "The house will not be sold," I continued. "The Lewis House Foundation will open its doors soon. I want wakes with hands held, not calculators clicking. I want late birthdays, autumn dances, Sunday soup. I want someone to be there when it's someone's time to go. And us, Mom." Olivia broke down. "What's going to happen to us? You'll find out who you are without my money. It's hard, but possible." "Do you hate us?" Brandon tried to wound before being wounded. "No, I love you. And because I love you, I'm cutting away what's rotted." A man from Brandon's office coughed. Someone opened a window. The smell of lilies finally escaped. Ruth appeared quietly and offered me her hand. I didn't take it. I stood on my own. "One last thing," I said, with the calm of someone finishing embroidery. "When my husband Harold died, I wanted to believe family was a branch that wouldn't break. Today, I understand. Family isn't a branch, it's a root. And roots can't be seen, but they hold you up." "Are you saying that we," Olivia stammered. "I'm saying you pulled at my leaves when I needed shade. And now I'm planting for those who never had a garden." No one applauded. Not for lack of will, for lack of knowing how. Sometimes, silence is the only ovation possible. Robert ended things efficiently. "Soon, the Lewis House Foundation team will reach out to those present to organize donations and volunteer work." Ruth smiled at me as if pinning a medal on my chest. I took a deep breath. I walked up to my photograph and slowly turned it around, leaving its blank back facing the room. "This image doesn't serve me anymore," I said. "From now on, I stay." I walked out the front door with steps I hadn't taken since I was 40. In the garden, the wind lifted a bit of my hair. I wanted to laugh out loud, like opening an old closet and finding a dress that still fits. Behind me, I heard Olivia call out. I didn't turn. "She can look for me outside the funeral. Here ends the scene. I deserved to live." They thought the funeral was the end. Little did they know that in that same house, I would open a place where life begins again. I woke up the next morning with my whole body aching. It wasn't age, it was resurrection. As I brewed a strong cup of coffee, the news was already buzzing. Widow reappears alive at her own funeral. Family outraged. Neighbors applaud. My name was trending. Videos showed me walking out of the wake, the guests' shocked faces. Olivia's pale expression, all neatly cut and served for anyone ready to judge me with a finger tap. Vengeful grandma, one commentator declared. Humiliated mother strikes back, said another. Social media went wild with theories that I was seeking fame, that I'd lost my mind, that I was hiding a secret fortune. I smiled. At last, they were talking about me, not about who I was supposed to be. Robert arrived carrying a folder full of documents. TV networks are asking for interviews, and your children, well, they're furious. They've always been furious whenever I made choices that didn't suit them. He sighed. Marga, do you realize the scale of this? I do. A story only becomes big when it's true. Before leaving, he said softly, your strength, it was always there. The world's just noticing now. I closed the door and stood still, thinking the lie had been buried. But the truth still needed to live. I just didn't know that, along with the Lewis House Foundation, I was also opening the black box of our family. The mansion began to receive visitors, not from real estate agents, from people, volunteer nurses, architects offering help, elderly folks who'd heard about a house where no one dies alone. The Lewis House Foundation had become a real project with a registered charter, partnerships with hospitals, and a waiting list longer than I ever imagined. I went into the old guest room and started sorting through linens, curtains, keepsakes, things that might serve someone who truly needed them. That's when I heard the door slam. Olivia walked in, trembling with rage. You've destroyed everything. I destroyed what, exactly? I asked. Our reputation, our future. People are laughing at us. They're laughing at what you've become, I answered calmly. She came so close I could see her eyes red, not from grief, but from wounded pride. You're going to undo this. You'll take it all back. My dear, I spent a lifetime taking things back. Now, I'm moving forward. Olivia froze. For the first time, I saw fear in her. Mom, I don't know how to live without your money. Then, start learning to live with yourself. She turned and left. The door slammed with the force of someone who's never learned how to close a chapter. I took 2 steps forward, as if moving through time itself. This house used to belong to you. Now it will belong to those who care, not those who discard. But one name on the waiting list would change everything, and bring an old ghost back into the room. In the middle of the afternoon, while I was reviewing application forms, one name froze me in place. Clara Lewis, age 80, no registered family contacts. Lewis, my last name, Harold's last name. Who brought this form in? I asked the volunteer. She did. Arrived by taxi. She's in the waiting room. My stomach turned. Clara, the name Harold never allowed me to say. The story he swore he'd buried long before marrying me. I went to the waiting room. A lady with gentle eyes and neatly arranged white hair sat with her hands folded in her lap. When she saw me, her eyes widened. Marga, you knew him? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. She drew a deep breath. I knew Harold long before you did. How long before? Long enough to know he should never have hidden you from me. A heavy silence fell between us. Yes, I'm his sister. Harold didn't have a sis. She placed her hand over mine. He did. He just didn't have room for me in the world you two built together. I felt the ground split beneath me. Why come now? Because I heard this is a place where no one dies forgotten. And he forgot you. He forgot to claim me. The revelation hit like cold wind to the face. Harold, the man who always said family is everything, had abandoned part of his own. The pain I felt wasn't about the past. It was for all the lies used to build my foundation. I came to ask if I'm still enough of a Lewis to stay, she said. I sat beside her. From now on, Clara, you decide what it means to be a Lewis. And I hugged her. Because sometimes, family isn't an agreement, it's a gesture. But if Clara's arrival opened a door to the past, what came through that door would tear down walls. The next day, Robert called me in for an urgent meeting. Marga, Brandon has filed a lawsuit against you. I expected as much. It's not just that. He also went to the bank and took out a loan in your name, using old powers of attorney. He's stealing from me, while I'm still breathing. The truth hit like a slap I'd already imagined, but it always hurts more when it finally lands. We can overturn everything in court, Robert explained, but it'll make ugly headlines. That's what he's counting on. Brandon didn't want justice. He wanted leverage, public humiliation. That night I heard a knock at the door. It was him. Expensive suit, overpowering cologne, that fake smile. Mom, I think we need to talk like adults. Adults don't commit crimes, Brandon. I did it for the good of the family. No, you did it for the good of your ego. He stepped closer, wearing the same look Harold used to have when he lost control. If you don't give the inheritance back, I'll destroy this house and anyone inside it. The threat was clear as daylight, and that I don't forgive. Brandon, you lost your mother the day you buried who I was. There's still time to start over. I already did. You're the one still standing at the funeral. He clenched his fist, then let it go. He knew he couldn't win by force, so he'd try with scandal. Are you declaring war? He hissed. No, sweetheart, I said slowly. I'm confirming the defeat of a man who's already lost his character. He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Ruth had arrived just minutes earlier. And now, she asked. Now, I said, begins the second part of my life, living without fear. I looked around the room, once empty, now filled with purpose. The Lewis House Foundation was standing, I was standing, and that, he would never stand. The funeral was only the beginning. Now, they'd have to bury me alive twice to silence me. Within a week, I'd become the talk of the entire town, at the butcher's shop, at the pharmacy, in the endless message groups. Some people said, poor woman, she had to fake her own death just to be heard. Others remarked, brave, she did what so many mothers wished they could do. And, of course, there were those who whispered behind my back, so much humiliation, she must have been a terrible mother. Ah, how people love to invent blame when their love is too small to understand a grand gesture. Meanwhile, Brandon was doing his part. Interviews, posts, videos, all following the same false storyline, that I was being manipulated, that I was senile, that it was all a scheme to ruin them. A reporter stopped me right in front of the house. Mrs. Lewis, did you plan all this to get revenge on your children? I looked straight into the camera. No, I planned to survive them. The line went viral within minutes, and for the first time, I felt that the world was listening. But some voices only listen to you, so they can silence you later. That night, Clara sat beside me on the porch. The moon seemed to shine only on what she was about to say. Marga, there's a truth about my brother you need to know before others use it against you. My heart caught in my throat, but I held tightly to the railing. Tell me. She took a deep breath. Harold and I grew up in an orphanage. An orphanage. He always said his parents died when he was a teenager. No, we were abandoned when we were children. The ground slipped beneath me. Harold had lied about the roots of his own life. Clara went on. He always wanted to erase where he came from. To him, the past was shame. To me, it was all we had. That's why he hid you. That's why he hid from me. My chest tightened. I had loved a man who carried a pain he never showed me. And by hiding it, he made me believe our family was whole. Clara took my hand. Don't hate him. He did what he thought he needed to survive. But in trying to survive, he killed part of you both. She nodded, her eyes dry but glistening. I just want a place where I won't be forgotten anymore. I hugged her. Here, Clara, no one is forgotten. Thank you, she whispered. You're giving me back my own last name. I closed my eyes for a moment and thought, what an irony. It took a funeral for life to start telling me the truth, but the truth never comes alone. It always brings the past by the hand. The attack came from where I least expected, the house's structure. Literally, it was almost 2 a.m. when I heard the crash. I ran outside, Ruth right behind me, Clara trying to keep up. The side of the house was blown open, bricks shattered, dust hanging in the air, and tire tracks across the lawn. Someone had driven a car into the wall. Police arrived. Reporters. The lights flashed, red and blue in Scandal. Brandon showed up shouting, "This is your fault. If you'd sold the house earlier, no one would have gotten hurt. Have you lost your mind?" I asked. "I'm protecting our assets. Ours. You lost that right the day you tried to bury me twice." He stepped closer, eyes like rockets. "I want everything back." "Then learn this. Whoever destroys the house doesn't inherit the roof." The officers exchanged looks. I went on. "I'll beef up security and file reports." "You won't win," Brandon spat. "I already have," I answered, "because I'm finally standing, and you're sinking alone." I heard him pound the steering wheel as he climbed into his car, the sound of a man furious at losing control, of me and of himself. At dawn, standing among the rubble, Ruth put a hand on my shoulder. "Is this going to stop you?" "No, Ruth." I looked at the house bathed in morning light. "This will make me stronger." And, for the first time since the funeral, something grew inside me. Power. Not the kind that dominates, the kind that sustains. They tried to knock down walls. Now they'd have to face what remained standing. The day after the attack, architects and volunteers showed up without me asking. I heard about the foundation. How can I help? My mother died alone. I don't want that to happen to anyone else. I came because no one should be buried before their time. The city was with me. As we cleared the debris, Clara watched it all with wide, childlike eyes. How can you be so strong, Marga? I'm not strong, I said. I just stopped asking permission to exist. A group of women approached. We want to donate our time. And our voices, another added. No more staying silent. I chuckled softly. Here, no one is just a background character in their own story. The house was starting to rebuild, but more than walls, a purpose was rising again. Ruth pulled me aside. Have you realized? Realized what? The funeral wasn't the end. It was the baptism. I smiled. But while I was gaining lives, my children were losing control. Brandon hit where it hurt the most. He launched an online campaign titled, "My Mother Was Manipulated by Opportunists." There were photos of me dying and coming back to life, as if I were some kind of walking fraud. Cruel comments spread like rot, but like a poorly lit fire. It flared in the wrong direction. A woman posted a video in response. I'm an elderly woman, and if I pretended to be dead to find out if my son still loves me, I'm afraid of the answer. The video hit millions of views. Then came another testimony. Her story is mine, except I didn't come back in time. And another. And another. Ungrateful children started being questioned. Abused children began to speak up. Isolated elders found their voices. And my son found national shame. Samantha resurfaced in the press, claiming she no longer recognized the man Brandon had become. But I did. He had become exactly what I feared and tried to prevent. At the gate, an old woman handed me a flower. Your courage gave a name to our pain. A lump rose in my throat. Because what began as vengeance had become a movement. And movements like this, no one can stop. Clara called me into the office. She was holding a box. It belonged to him, she said, meaning Harold. Inside, I found a photograph of the two of them as children, a worn medal engraved with the word family, a letter addressed to me, never sent, and a document bearing the name of a woman I didn't know. I tried to breathe. Then I opened the letter. Marga, if I ever find the courage, I'll tell you that I learned to love too late. And that's why I've always loved in fear. I closed my eyes. Harold had never betrayed me with another woman. He betrayed me with the past he hid. Clara held my fingers. He thought love only mattered if it was perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, I said. And fear is just another form of lying. She sighed. I only wish he'd trusted me, trusted us. I embraced her. Now, it's the two of us who trust each other. Something shifted then, a quiet kind of repair. We couldn't undo what was missing, but we could stop it from hurting any longer. I closed the box. Nothing stays hidden in this family anymore. But those who've lived off lies never accept the truth easily. The press called for a conference. Robert thought it was too risky. They'll try to destroy your story to save your children. I took a deep breath. Then I'll speak. About what? About everything. I stepped into the makeshift auditorium, set up in the house's hall. Lights, microphones, eyes waiting for me to stumble. I didn't. My name is Marga Lewis, and I am alive despite everything they tried to do to me before and after my own funeral. The room fell silent. I gave my money, my time, and my body to raise children who, one day, forgot who taught them how to walk. I looked straight into the camera, straight at Brandon and Olivia, wherever they were, when they thought I couldn't speak anymore. I spoke louder. Flashes, absolute attention. And today, I dedicate what I've built not to the blood that hurt me, but to the lives that can still bloom. Applause, real, this time. The conference ended, but my story was only beginning to be heard. As I stepped off the stage, Ruth whispered, "You just earned what they always had but never deserved, respect." I drew a deep breath. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy. Now that the world had heard my voice, my children would do anything to silence it. I was still processing the impact of the press conference when the phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Lewis. Yes, this is the police department. Your son, Brandon, has been detained. Silence. A silence so deep I could hear my own heart doubt itself. What happened? Attempted bank fraud and property damage. Is he all right? He's furious and asking for you. Ruth looked at me as if to ask whether I was ready for another fall. I wasn't, but I went anyway. At the station, Brandon looked like a boy trapped in the body of a man who never grew up. You came to save me. I didn't come to save anyone. I came to listen. He laughed bitterly. The media's calling me a monster. Monsters aren't always the ones the media points to. Son. Don't call me son. You still are. Just in name. He bit his lip, his eyes red with a mix of rage and fear. You ruined my life. I gave you every chance, Brandon. You threw away each one. I leaned forward. Grow up, Brandon. That's all. I'd rather die than live the way you want. The words stabbed, but I didn't let them pierce through. Then live the way you chose, and face what comes with it. I left without hugging him. No promises, no rescue. Outside, fine rain touched my face before I reached the car. Ruth held my arm. You did the right thing. Right doesn't hurt any less, Ruth. I just didn't realize that while Brandon was falling, someone else was already closing in to drag me down with him. Olivia asked to come to the house. For the first time since the funeral, she knocked before entering. Mom, I did everything wrong. Haven't we all? I replied. She sat in the armchair where Harold used to read the morning paper. Her hands trembled, and her eyes, they were mine. Brandon lost his way, and I followed him. Did you follow him out of love, or out of fear, out of habit? I didn't know I had a choice. Olivia began to cry, but this time, the tears were real. Mom, I judged you for everything you ever tried to do for us. You all judged me for things I never even tried, she sighed. I thought that if you died, I'd finally have peace. That's not peace, daughter. That's poisoned relief. She stood and walked to the window. I can change. You can, I said. But do it because you deserve to, not because you think it'll please me. Olivia turned toward me, her voice breaking. I want to be better than I was. Then start with the truth. All of it. She took a deep breath. Brandon didn't act alone. My heart stopped for a second. Who else? She closed her eyes. Dad. What? He taught us that money is a weapon, and that whoever holds it has to keep everyone else afraid of losing. Even their own mother. Especially their own mother. Harold's past surfaced with teeth. Olivia went on. He used to tell us, if you want what's mine, never let her control you. The sentence ripped through me. Harold never wanted to be the patriarch. He wanted to be the only one. He thought if you ever realized your own strength, you'd destroy everything he built. I closed my eyes. Sometimes, the truth is worse than the lie, because there's no way back from it. And the worst of the truth was still to come. That night, I took the box Clara had brought once more into my hands, but this time, I opened it with the resolve of someone who deserves an answer. The letter Harold never sent me held more than regret. It held a confession. I kept you away from my sister because I was afraid you'd look at her and realize I hadn't been honest with you. My stomach turned. I stole from you the right to know where I came from, and to love the one I chose to reject. The words trembled on the page, but each one landed like a knife to the chest. If I'm gone before you, I ask you to take care of her. She's the part of me I never managed to protect. I folded the letter closed. Clara watched me in silence, the kind of silence that already knows the answer before the question is asked. He loved you, Marga, she said softly. He just didn't know how. He loved me like a man afraid of losing. And you, I loved him believing he was perfect. She held my hand. And now, I took a deep breath. Now, I love him knowing he was human. And that hurts more. Because it's easy to hate the ones who fail you. Harder to forgive those who can no longer ask for forgiveness. And then the phone rang. It was the one piece of news that would make everything collapse and begin again. Sometimes, to understand what's been done to us in the present, we have to revisit who we were in the past. That's what I thought as I folded Harold's letter closed. I sat on the bedroom floor, leaned against the stacked boxers, and let memory pull me back like a hand returning me to a life that still beat somewhere inside me. I saw myself at 23, hair tied up in a rush because I worked double shifts, studied when I could, and dreamed all the time. Harold had just walked into the shop where I worked as a clerk, cheap suit, worn shoes, but his eyes, they wanted the whole world. Do you believe in destiny? He asked, picking up a piece of jewelry with fingers that had probably never touched anything so delicate. Only in what we make with our own hands, I replied. not realizing those same hands would one day craft me a queen's crown, before locking me inside it. Harold never said much about his life. He always changed the subject when I asked about family. He used to say the past only got in the way of people trying to rise. I didn't hear the warning buried in those words. Those who try to bury their past eventually bury the ones they love most, too. I remember our first jewelry shop, a tiny space with a modest display and too much hope. I remember staying up nights cataloging pieces, and him showing up with coffee and a tired smile. I want to give you a future where you never have to apologize for existing. The irony of life is that it uses the very thing that once enchanted us to destroy us later. Because when the business grew, he began to say, "Don't talk to reporters. Don't be in the photos. You don't know how to handle this." And I started disappearing, smiling while I vanished, in love, blind, ready to die for him. Long before they pretended I was dead, I closed my eyes. I loved Harold, with everything I was, with everything I had left, with everything he was missing. Maybe that was the problem. I loved enough for both of us. He loved just enough to save himself, not to save me with him. When I opened my eyes, I understood. The love that almost saved me was the same love that almost buried me. And I made myself a promise right then. I will never again let anyone bury me alive. Not the past, not my children, not the memory of the man I loved too much. "Mrs. Lewis, this is the municipal hospital calling. Yes, your daughter, Olivia, was in a car accident. She's stable, but shaken. She asked to see you." The world spun. Not from panic, from urgency. I went straight to the hospital. Olivia sat there with her arm in a sling, her face scratched, her heart in pieces. I got upset after we talked and I lost control. She said, "It's all right now." "No, it's not." She gripped my hand harder than I expected. "Forgive me, Mom, for everything, for all the years." I stroked her hair, the way I used to when she was a baby. "Forgiveness doesn't change the past, my dear, but does it change us?" "Yes, and that's enough." She cried quietly. So did I, but it was the kind of crying that waters, not the kind that drowns. When I left her room, I felt a certainty settle inside me. I hadn't lost my children. They had just lost themselves. And now, maybe, we were finally finding our way back. But before I could rebuild a family, I still had to rebuild a home, and face the one who wasn't done trying to destroy it. I came back from the hospital at dawn. The house was silent, but not empty. There was the smell of fresh paint on the walls, the faint tapping of a hammer, and Hope walking barefoot through the rooms. Ruth handed me a folded newspaper. She resurrected her own life. Now she's bringing others back to theirs. I smiled, not because of the praise, but because it was true. Clara watched me, her expression caught between admiration and sorrow. "I miss him," she confessed. "So do I said. "But missing someone can't be the reason we stop existing." She nodded. "Do you think he'd be proud?" "I think he'd be terrified." She let out a short laugh. "Then it's perfect. Sometimes healing begins when we stop trying to please the dead and learn to live with the living." But there was still someone who didn't know how to lose. My son. A notification lit up on my phone. "Urgent. Brandon Lewis calls press conference." Robert called almost at the same time. "He's going to accuse you, Marga, publicly." "Of what?" "Emotional fraud, psychological manipulation, even faking your own death." I took a deep breath. "He wants to turn my life into a crime. He just doesn't realize everyone's already seen who he is." I decided to go. When I arrived, the cameras were already aimed, the crowd ready. Brandon stepped onto the stage, flanked by lawyers and burning with rage. "My mother suffered a psychological breakdown," he began, "and she's being manipulated into taking everything from us." He held up papers as if they were sacred proof, but they were empty of morality. "She doesn't know what she's doing," he shouted. "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said, climbing onto the stage without invitation. The audience held its breath. "Brandon, the worst kind of death isn't the one that happens to the body." "Oh, here we go." "The worst death," I continued, "is when your character dies, but you keep walking anyway." The silence in the room hit like a shot without gunpowder. "I gave you the world," I said, "and you tried to bury me in it." Brandon trembled with anger and defeat. "Get out of my way, Mother. I'm not in your way. I'm proof that you lost yours." He dropped the microphone and walked out carrying his own reputation with him, straight to the grave he dug himself. He never tried to silence me again, not me, and not his own conscience. But while one child was falling, The other was beginning to rise. Olivia came home after being discharged from the hospital. She walked slowly, the kind of slow that comes from carrying regret in your knees. Mom, yes, sweetheart, I want to try again, to be your daughter. For real this time. Her words finally had weight, and a story behind them. We don't need to rush, I said softly. We just need the truth. She sat beside me. I want to meet Aunt Clara. I want her to know me too. Clara smiled, her eyes brimming. I've always wanted to be an aunt. I just didn't know if there was still room for it. Ruth appeared with fresh tea in hand. Family isn't what starts out right, she said. Then what is it? Olivia asked. It's what we choose to keep being, Ruth replied. Before I could, and in that moment, I realized my family was finally coming home, not for inheritance, but for love. Now that the heart was ready, it was time to open what love had built. The big day had come. Lights, flowers, elderly guests arriving with slow steps and enormous smiles. The press followed every move, every breath of it. At the gate, the new sign gleamed, Lewis House Foundation for those who deserve to be remembered. I stepped onto the garden stage, looking at each face before me, each story that had once been pushed toward oblivion. I was treated as if I were dead while I was still alive. Today, I give back to the living the right not to die alone. Applause, long, honest. Olivia wiped away quiet tears. Clara held my hand, proud and steady. Ruth smiled, the kind of smile that says she always knew I'd make it. And in the crowd, I saw familiar marks, guilt, forgiveness, new beginnings. I drew a deep breath. This house is built from memories that no longer fit inside funerals. Cameras captured everything, but no screen in the world could show the strength of that moment. I was alive. I was back. I was whole. But before the end, there was still one chapter left, the one only life itself knows how to write. The beginning again. 5 years passed. The Lewis mansion, once the stage for a funeral, was now a stage for life. Wheelchairs on the porch, laughter in the garden, the smell of cake baking every afternoon. The Lewis House Foundation now had branches in 2 cities. My name appeared in magazines, reports, conferences. But what made me proud wasn't the numbers. It was the small, ordinary miracles. An old woman learning to walk again. A grandfather welcoming his grandchildren back for visits. A hug arriving before forgetfulness could. Life had come home again. Ruth and Clara were my constant companions. And Olivia, oh Olivia, she came every morning to kiss me and say, "Good morning, Mom. Today's going to be better than yesterday." And I believed her. But there was still one reunion I had yet to face. Brandon wasn't doing well. After the scandal, he'd lost his job, his friends, even his own confidence. His vanity had been his last shelter, and it had collapsed. He came to see me one late afternoon. Hollow eyes, pride in pieces. "I came to see you," he said quietly. "I know, I'm here." He took a deep breath, like someone learning to swallow what he once spat out. "I did everything wrong, Mom." "You did." "I did it out of fear." "Fear isn't an excuse." "I know." He looked straight into me. "Will you forgive me?" "Forgiveness isn't a free pass to run away, Brandon." "I'm not trying to run. I want to learn." I hugged my son. And I felt, truly felt, that it was the first real hug he'd given me since he was 12 years old. "I can't go back to who I was," he confessed. "None of us can, son." "Then, can I start here?" "You can. And you, do you still want to be my mother?" "I've always been." "You're the one who stepped out of the picture," he cried. I did too. But they were thawing tears, not drowning ones. Family doesn't disappear. Sometimes, it just flickers for a while. Clara organized a simple but symbolic tribute. We planted 1 tree for every life that had begun again at the foundation. When my turn came, I wrote on a small wooden plaque, "Here I buried the fear of being forgotten." ML Olivia planted a golden trumpet tree, Clara, a magnolia, and Brandon, a young oak, his hands still trembling, but his heart steady. "Dad loved this tree," he said. I smiled, with equal parts pain and tenderness. "Your father made many mistakes," I told him. "But he also taught me that when love fails, you try again." Clara reached out and held our hands. "That's what family is," she said, "falling together and standing back up together." And for the first time, I felt we were finally on the same page. No masks, no funerals, just alive. But there was still one last speech left for me. Not to erase the past, but to light the path ahead. I was invited to speak at the national celebration for Seniors' Day. The auditorium was full, cameras, officials, entire families gathered. I stepped onto the stage, took a breath, and spoke like someone who no longer owed anything to silence. Have you ever heard the story of the woman who was buried before her time? Well, that woman is me. I died when they told me I was a burden. I died when my children called me useless. I died when they asked me to stop existing just because I'd already lived enough. But I came back. And I came back to say, it's never too late to demand respect, applause, tears, pride. I went on. If anyone ever tells you you're too old to dream, show them that being reborn has its own age, the age of courage. In the front row, Olivia smiled, her eyes shining. Brandon held Aunt Clara's hand, and Ruth, as always, looked at me like she was saying, I knew it. I finished. The funeral of the matriarch was only the beginning. Today, I inaugurate the life I always deserved. And that's how I finished telling my story. Tell me in the comments, what would your reaction have been? I want to thank this channel Buried by Family for allowing me to share this part of my life with you. This channel needs your support to keep bringing more stories like this one. So click the subscribe button. That way, other women will also be able to share their truths here. On the screen, there's another video you might like and the icon to subscribe to the channel.